klar?
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Consultative Forum for People of African Descent 2025. I am Binta Cham.
And I am Adam Akani. We're thrilled to have you here with us today at the Interkulturelt Museum in Oslo. Please feel free to take coffee, tea, or water, and remember to register. And we'll start at 3:30. Thank you.
Frankrike. Ja. Ja. Hi, everyone. Firstly, we would just like to ask you to move closer to the stage so that we can see your beautiful faces. Yes, so that the people that arrive late can sit at the back.
De må sitte foran. Nei, det går bra. Okay, hello. Hello, welcome. Now we're ready to start. And to kick off our program, we welcome a powerful voice in the fight against racism and discrimination.
Please join us in welcoming Kai, who is an advisor of UMUD, with his keynote, Racism in Everyday Life, Experiences and Examples.
Thank you very much. This was a presentation meant to be held by my director, my chief, Akhenaton De Leon, who has been in the field for 30 years, who founded OMUD, and who is, my mentor. So there is a couple of fields I'm going to touch on today. Of course, there is many more, and some of them are more pregnant than others. But these are cases and we can say important milestones for UMUD. And I start back in 1994. This case concerned housing discrimination, and it was basically the start of UMUD. Aki, he had this friend who was from Ghana, and he had been to this housing forward, what can I say? Finn.no didn't exist back then. Of course, some of you may remember this. So you had to go to this store kind of thing, where you have these shelves with apartments. And in some of them, some of these listings, it would say stuff like black persons not welcome. If you're from Africa, don't apply, stuff like that. And Aki couldn't believe this and heard this from his friend, and he went there himself, and he could witness it. He saw this with his own eyes, and the takeaway was that he decided to file charges, and the whole thing went through the court system. And it started in tingretten, and it was dismissed, and it went to lagmannsretten, and it was dismissed, and it went all the way to Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court ruled that this way of advertising was perfectly okay. And that was, and this is, and the UMOD method. You go in, you find well-documented cases, and then you take it through the court system, and you have a result. And a negative outcome is also a result. So now, at this point, you know that here is a loophole. The penal code is weak at this point, so it has to be strengthened. And then UMOD had to do lobby work on this. And of course now it is illegal to do that sort of marketing. It was a long way from 94 to until 2005, I think it was illegal by penal code, which is a paragraph called 349A. But it's an example of catching up on something which gives you a bad feeling to your stomach, acting on that bad feeling and try to sort it out and hopefully close that gap in the penal code. Another example, I did send my presentation, but it's not up there. But either way, it's not important. I have it here, so I just talk from that. Another example is nightclub discrimination, which is something that is, of course, still a case, still happens. I'm not saying that housing discrimination not occur. Of course it does, but now we have a penal code to address it. Not so easily done by nightclub discrimination. Of course, we have the hate speech paragraph and stuff like that, but not that aimed specifically into the problem at hand. And it's a lot of problems also with nightclub discrimination, as it comes for many other discrimination areas. But one of the most important is it's often elusive to document. So it happens, and you may have witnesses and stuff like that, but it's really important to document it as it happens, when it happens. And witnesses takes you so far, but your counterpart will also have his witnesses, and they will surely argue against your point of view. Nowadays we have mobile phones and stuff like that, and that helps. But these are challenges and problems that occur on this discrimination field. Furthermore, another groundbreaking case that UMOD took to Diskrimineringsnemnda for it started for 2.5 years, I think. Diskrimineringsnemnda is a court system, but it's not the ordinary judicial court. It's a discrimination court, and it has its proceedings, it has its process, but it takes very long time. So one case can run for 2 years. This one took 1.5 years, and it was about segregation of school classes. We had one report on that from Sørumsand, which is in Ullensaker kommune, I think it is, a bit northeast from Oslo, from us now. And it was this class, back then it was second grade, which had been, some parents had reported that they felt that it had been segregated. So we had a huge number of people of African descent stacked in one of the classes. And it was improbable that would be by coincidence. So it seems. And we took it to Diskrimineringsnemnda, and after 1.5 years, they too came to the same conclusion, and that Ullensaker kommune had discriminated both against the people of African descent, which was placed in this class, but also against all the children from majority families. So you can be discriminated as a majority also if you are robbed from a multicultural upbringing, so it seems. And since then, we had a lot of emails and phones coming in from other places in Norway concerning the same thing. So this is a field of discrimination that is just for us coming to forth, and it seems to be a very immense field of discrimination, and a very important one, because this concerns our children, of course. Furthermore, of course, we have a lot of cases and a lot of field of discrimination that we're working in. But I would like to also say that we are doing judicial counseling. So if you or anyone you know sits with a icky feeling in your stomach that you have been done wrong against, then I would urge you to contact us, and then we may look into that case, and perhaps we do have a case that we could take to trial. And that is of great importance because as for the housing discrimination case back in 1994, there are still many holes and loopholes which we are hoping to, of course, shut tight for the perpetrators and for, of course, Norwegian governments. You know, they too do need to have frames and codes to proceed out from. And I think that would be my submission today. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing these important perspectives. You've pointed out some of the biggest challenges in discrimination cases. Now, from local realities to global frameworks, our next speaker brings an international lens to our conversation.
Please welcome Miriam Ekiduku from the UN Expert Group for People of African Descent, and she will join us online. Thank you.
screen. Zoom in the chat to know if I can start speaking. Excellent, thank you. So I just got the message that you can hear me. So apologies for the little technical difficulties, and I hope that the sound is okay. Okay, so good afternoon, family. Good afternoon, comrades. It's a great honor for me to have this opportunity to speak with you today. I want to thank my dear sister Nana for inviting me and for her tireless work in building our collective power. And also, I am hereby expressing my appreciation to the Gambia House for organizing this event. Today, I'm joining you virtually from The Hague, where I'm also one of the speakers and taking part in the international conference, Building Power for Reparatory Justice. And let me say this clearly, whether in The Hague, in Oslo, in Bergen, in Trondheim, our struggles are connected. Our voices are connected. Our power is connected. I speak to you not only as a sister, but as a member of the United Nations Working Group of Experts on People of African Descent. BG PAD was created in 2002 as part of the implementation of the Durban Declaration and Program of Action known as the DDPA, the strongest global framework to fight racism, racial discrimination, xenophobia, and related intolerance. And we are not alone in this work. We did so alongside the Working Group of Experts on People of African Descent, we have the Permanent Forum on People of African Descent. It was created in 2021. The second decade for people of African descent, from 2025 to 2034, built on recognition, justice, and development as the follow-up of the first decade. And I truly and honestly hope and believe that by now we will be able to advocate and lobby properly so that the second decade can be a success. There's the third committee, the Committee on the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. It monitors governments under the legally binding ICER Treaty. The Special Rapporteur on Racism, who exposes injustices worldwide, and the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, who coordinates the program of activities under the decade. Together, these mechanisms are not symbolic. They are tools for justice, and they are yours to use. I was part of the working group's delegation that visited Norway from the 11th to the 20th of December in 2023. We met with government officials, institutions, and most importantly, with people of African descent across the country. Unfortunately, I can't see who is in the audience, but I do believe that and hope that I had the privilege to meet many of you while we were in Norway. During our visit, we listened, we learned, and we carried your truth to the Human Rights Council. And the truth is this: racism in Norway is real. It is systemic. It is structural. We saw it in employment, where accents block opportunities and fit becomes a code for exclusion. We saw it in schools where Black children are underestimated and their history is erased. We saw it in child welfare, where families are separated through bias and misunderstanding. We saw it in policing, where young Black men are disproportionately stopped and profiled. We saw it in healthcare, where racial bias undermines dignity and outcomes. We saw it in everyday life, where Norwegians of African descent born there are still asked, but where are you really from? And we also found this. Many Norwegians do not even recognize the racial bias they carry. There is internalized racism at work, unspoken but deeply felt. And we said clearly, integration is not the same as assimilation. People of African descent have the right to belong fully in Norway without erasing their culture, their history, or their identity. This is anti-Black racism in all forms: institutional, structural, internalized, and everyday racism. But let us also speak of our strength. People of African descent in Norway and across the world carry multiple literacies and forms of knowledge. We shine in education, overcoming barriers to achieve excellence in schools, universities, and research. We thrive in entrepreneurship, building businesses, driving innovation, creating opportunities, not only for ourselves, but for society as a whole. And at the core, we embody resilience, the power to rise again and again, no matter how many times we are pushed down. We also carry cultural wisdom, artistic creativity, spiritual depth, and ancestral memory. We bring languages, music, oral traditions, healing knowledge, and the capacity to survive and thrive. We are not just survivors of racism. We are not just victims. We are survivors. We are builders, innovators, visionaries, and leaders. This strength is our foundation. It is what no system of oppression can erase. In our report, VGPAD made our recommendations clear. Norway must collect and publish disaggregated data to expose disparities. Norway must reform hiring and promotion, so opportunities are based on merit, not stereotype. Norway must train child welfare professionals in anti-racism and use mediators to protect families. Norway must end racial profiling in policing and enforce accountability. Norway must strengthen complaint mechanisms so victims can find justice. Norway must transform education to include African histories and contributions. And Norway must ensure representation of people of African descent in decision-making at every level. Nothing about us without us. Yes, Norway has an action plan against racism and discrimination. That is welcome, but hear me clearly. An action plan without us at the table is a broken promise. An action plan without funding, without timelines, without accountability is just paper. This is where you, the community, must act. Our report, our findings on Norway is your tool. Use it, quote it, take it to schools, to employers, to municipalities, to the parliament. It is official UN evidence that cannot be denied. And if politicians fail to implement Norway's action plan, hold them accountable, call them out, demand answers, demand results, make sure they know that commitments without action will not be tolerated. The diaspora in Norway must rise, organize, build coalitions, speak with one voice, document, record discrimination, and send it to both national and UN bodies. Engage locally, claim seats in councils, schools, and boards. Support each other, mentor the youth, share networks, uplift the next generation. shape the story, celebrate Black excellence through art, culture, and media while dismantling stereotypes and rewriting the narrative. When we unite and act together, believe me, we are unstoppable. Family and comrades. When I was in Norway in December 2023, I heard, witnessed, and saw the pain of exclusion. But I also heard, witnessed, and saw the brilliance of resilience. I saw discrimination, but I also saw creativity, entrepreneurship, and determination. Here in The Hague, at Building Power for Reparatory Justice, I know this. The fight against anti-Black racism Norway is part of the global fight for reparatory justice. We have VGEPAD. We have the Permanent Forum on People of African Descent. We have CERD. We have the Special Rapporteur. We have the Second Decade. We have the High Commissioner's Program. We have the tools, and we have the urgency. But most importantly, we have each other. So I call on you, build grassroots initiative, strengthen collective efforts, unite across communities and across generations. The struggle will not be easy, but it will never be harder than the struggle of our ancestors who endured enslavement, colonialism, segregation, and laws that denied their humanity. They carried chains, they survived ships, they resisted plantations, they faced brutality written into law, and yet they endured, they resisted, they dreamt us into being. If they could fight and overcome, then surely we can organize and win. Because when we rise, Norway rises. When our children are safe, Norway is stronger. When our talents are recognized, Norway prospers. Comrades, family, let us rise. Let us act. Let us win together. And as I always finish, Amandla, power to our people. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Miriam. Our next session centers the voices of African women and their leadership in the diaspora.
Please welcome Dejo Bate, Chair of Gambia House.
Hello, now. I just, yeah, hello, yeah. Thank you so much, Kai and Omut and Mariam. It was really strong and inspiring presentation we've seen. There is racism in Norway because we don't want to talk about that. Just a couple of days ago, we had one of our sisters being killed. Everybody acted shocked. And a day ago, they were doing the mourning, and there were lots of people out there. Many people called me, and I saw many people send me text messages asking me, "Are you there?" And I said, "No." And I wrote back to them and said, I made a conscious effort not to be there. Not that I don't care, not that I was not shocked, not that I was not angry, not that I was not frustrated, but I believe we have turned into a nation of mourning and denial. When we get killed, we all gathered, politicians come and talk, everybody come and talk, activists come and talk, and then we go back. When we get insulted, people scream, and we go back. Whilst I was sitting at home, watching live, everybody who was there listening to people talking, there is this advertisement that passed by, and I've commented many times on that advertisement. And this advertisement is Hoira's advertisement. And it reads, Hoi invandring of hoi invandring of voor dårlig integrering gir grunn for kriminalitet. Derfor må vi stramme inn på innvandringen og bedre integrering, stem Høyre. I came from holidays, I saw it, it flashed, and I wrote, and I condemned it. My comment was deleted. It came back, because I thought maybe they remove it. It came back, I wrote again, and I said, you deleted my initial comment, but I felt this is dårlig political rhetoric, because you are now comparing us to criminals. Of course, as usual, the extremists came into the comment section with all kinds of hateful messages. There were very good people who also came in to just acknowledge what I was saying, that it was wrong. And I said I refuse to discuss or comment or even respond to extremists. I respond to people who are interested in dialogue, but not hate. And I saw this advertisement the very day when Hoira, all these politicians are standing there talking. The advert was still going. And there was somebody who also commented and said, you have to put this down. Whilst we are mourning, somebody is killed. You still have this advertisement. So, and this is why I felt we have turned into a nation of mourning and denial. And I didn't want to be part of that. Our lives as African women and African women is a daily discrimination. You walk into the streets, a week won't go by, you don't feel it, meet it, or hear it. In the schools, at work, in the streets, in the social settings, football training, we all see it every day. We go back home and we mourn. We mourn the death of our passing wood as human beings. We mourn the death of our dignity. We mourn the slow death of our humanity. So what is new? Why are we shocked? Because this is day life. When we talk about racism in this country, we are told Norwegians are not racist. We are told there is no racism in this country. We are told we misinterpret it. We are told we are too sensitive. We are told we are using it. We're using it as an excuse. But I always say, who feels it, knows it. And as long as we are not accepting that there is racism in this country, just like Miriam said it, yes, there is racism, it's confirmed now. Unless we accept it, unless we are ready to talk about racism in this country, unless we are ready to accept when we say that we are being discriminated, to accept it that yes, because it is our body, it is our feeling, it is our humanity that has been taken away from us. Unless we are ready to do that, then we are still struggling. Again, Miriam confirmed it again, there is racism in Norway. And both politicians, the political rhetoric, we are in election time. The political rhetoric has to go down. I always tell people, the description the media give us, African women, we produce a lot of children. We are production machinery. We are lazy. These are the projections. These are the facts. They're there. We don't want to work. We don't want to integrate. This is the description. And I always ask the question, who is going to employ such a person? Who would like to have such a neighbor? Who would like to be with such a person? Who? Because that's the description. You describe me, you paint a picture, you create an image of me, then you are making me a liability. We are being called at social clientele because we are we are the most people who use the social. We are NAF clientele. All these things, we are hearing it. Yet still, when somebody got killed, we all get shocked. And we all stand there with all the rhetorics. I'm not saying it's not okay to be there, but we have to be honest. We have to start having honest conversation. We live in this country. We have our children living in this country. We should be able to be honest enough to have this conversation and accept that there is racism, but how do we work together and tackle it? Because that's the only way we can do it. And as we see politicians go further to further amplify those words. And I even wrote in the comment sector, I said, look, if FRP was writing this, I would have passed because it's a normal thing. But if Hoira is writing this, I'm worried because it's like we are going from extreme length to the other. Hoira's desperation to win votes shouldn't be at the cost of us, immigrants. And that's the conversation we should be having. Whilst you stand there mourning, you still have an advertisement running. Up to today, it's running on Facebook. But I must say, despite all these challenges, we have resilience, we have resistance, we have African women doing a lot of work that is not being seen. Miriam talked about grassroots engagement. We have lots of grassroots engagement, lots of African organizations doing fantastic work that are not seen, that are not funded because they are grassroots. They are not funded because they are not mainstream. We don't see them on the news because they are not mainstream. And that's also a conversation we need to take. Without those African women organizations, without those African women, today, a lot of things will happen. And today we are here because of one of those organizations, IAC Norway, that is run by African women. And I always tell people, if we don't start telling our stories, nobody is going to tell it for us. Nobody. Nobody. We have to learn to tell our stories. IAC Norway have been in existence for more than 10 years. Most of their members, over 86 members, most of the adults are working. We don't see that in the news. Most of the adults own their own house or apartment. We don't see that in the news. They have a young group, youth, who have been mentored by these elders, these mothers, who have organized themselves, mentoring young people. Today, we see our young generation leading the program today. We have young doctors, we have young engineers, we have young lawyers. We don't see that on the news because it's grassroots. We have all these people doing all this work with all these years. IAC is doing this work over 10 years. We don't see it on the news. These children are mentored. Knowledge is passed from one generation to the other. When I go to conferences, meetings, and I found these young people sitting there, already running their own thing, doing their own thing, and I said, why is it not out there? Why is it every time negative? So I am definitely urging all of us here today, let today be the start for the work together. We need to talk to each other. We need to communicate. We need to continue what we start today to address our problem. Nobody does it for us. I always say we have to speak for ourselves. We see on the media, we see the debates, we see the conversations, we see the discussions. We are not there. They speak for us. It's high time we speak for us, ourselves. And before I close, I would like to say something and acknowledge someone. I know he's not here with us today. We have to really say thank you to a man who has consistently stood for immigrants in this country. For years, he carried the fight against racism so consistently that his name has become synonymous with anti-racism. When you hear his name, you know it means resistance against injustice. You know it is synonymous with anti-racism. You know it means standing up for what is right. He never given up. Even when he told us, I am tired, he kept going. He kept holding the torch for each one of us, sometimes knowingly, sometimes unknowingly, but always with courage. And I can say this, things could have been much worse for us if it was not for him. He's been an inspiration for many of us, and today, I want us to honor that man. That's Aki, who is not here today with us, and many of us knows him. But he's represented by Kai, who was presented first. I just want to say thank you to all of you. Let's start organizing and not agonizing. Let's continue to speak for ourselves. If we don't, we will continue to mourn. And I tell people, that killing we saw, that killing we all scream about, is going to continue. And we will continue to be mourning. And the only way we can stop it is to be together. Let's take today as a starting point to the process where we sit down, talk to each other, find our solution, and do it for ourselves. We can talk for ourselves. We have the knowledge. We have the intelligence. We have the role models. In our society, we have a lot of people doing fantastic work. When we work together, we can change things. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ndei, for addressing such an important issue like racism. And I think we should give her another round of applause because that was really good. Now moving on to our next speaker. The future is shaped by the energy and vision of the youths.
Let's hear from Patrick Yambere from the IMDI Youth Network on Inclusion and Volunteering.
Oh. Okay. So we'll come back to Patrick, but now we can welcome Hatem Ben Mansour from the Pan-African Action Network in Norway.
Thank you. I don't know if we're able to get my presentation up or if I'm going without it. It doesn't really matter. Well, anyway, I'm supposed to talk about structural discrimination and the role of the African diaspora. First, I want to thank each one of you for attending this event today. For most, this is work done voluntarily, in addition to our jobs and other duties. And as research shows, volunteer work is to a large extent a question of surplus capacity and finances. That knowledge combined with the knowledge of the average socioeconomic situation, lack of material inheritance, and the black tax, people of African descent have less of the privileges often connected to volunteer work. And I applaud you who have been able to set aside time to be here. This again leads to the two themes of my presentation: structural racism and the role of the people of African descent living outside of the African continent. They are, of course, connected. Our role as people of African descent are inherently linked to our structural racism on a geopolitical level, as well as the structural racism we meet on an individual level in our day-to-day, hindering us in taking a larger role as people of African descent, as the diaspora on the global stage in connection to the African Union in our respective regions and countries. First, I'm going to talk about deconstructing structural racism. I'm going to go through 4 points with definition, recognition, acknowledgement for and knowledge of, and measures against structural racism. Discrimination on race, I would say definition of structural racism should be that discrimination on race where it's not intended on a personal level, not even necessarily intended on a structural level. Discrimination in blind spots, negligence on the situation of people of color, people of African descent especially, in combination with universalism, to be honest. It is both individuals on a group level and even into international affairs, as Kai has shown earlier with some concrete examples from Norway. On an international and global scale, we see it in the lack of media coverage of African conflicts, crimes against humanity, and even genocide in countries such as Congo and Sudan. The lack of respect for and continuing exploitation of African nations and nations of people of African-led descent, one of the most notable examples being Haiti. We see it in the UN. We just met to Miriam, that's part of the expert group, and I know they are underfunded, as well as the Permanent Forum for People of African Descent being vastly underfunded compared to, for instance, the Forum for People of Indigenous Descent. And we all know we don't have a permanent seat in the Security Council like all other continents. These structures are historical and ideological, and we need to have ideological tools to tear them down. For the historic enslavement of Africans and the subsequent colonization of Africa, there grew a necessity for an explanation to why this could be defended. An ideology to dehumanize and infantilize Africans and to overthrow African rulers while European kings were still considered monarchs by the grace of God. This was an ideology of pseudoscience that we still see in healthcare to this day. In differentiation diagnosis on basis of the same symptoms, in being taken as aggressive for the least expression and considered unable to lead. In Norwegian nation building, this was taken a step further, to be honest. In the lie of the exceptional homogeneous nation state, the artists and authors of national romance painted a picture of homogeneous ethnicity, excluding groups like Sami, Kven, and Roma that was already here. Whiteness and typical phenotypes appearance got linked to Norwegianness. Christianity got linked to Norwegianness, and cultural traits and activities that we all know about got linked to Norwegianness. To a degree that research have shown, a larger degree of Norwegians do not accept any non-Christians without Norwegian grandparents who does not enjoy cabin life or skiing as Norwegians, and of course, no people with visible African descent. Even in a country that explicitly rejects racism, the history and ideology that were woven into the fabric of society, our starting point, opportunities, safety, are connected to where our family's heritage came from. Who you grew up with, and not least, who you know. Structural racism are when inequalities are overlooked and where structures make it possible for individuals to act intentionally racist and discriminatory with impunity. Structural racism must therefore be defined as situations where these threads of hierarchical classification of humans are perpetuated, neglected, or overlooked, and leads us to being underprivileged, passed over, and wronged. Structural racism is often recognized in lack of consideration to the historic and existing mechanisms of homogeneity and exclusion. In Norway, it is seldom intended and can often be hidden in universalism or a language and even intentions of equality. One of the most obvious manifestations of structural racism is the lack of us in policy and decision-making positions at all levels. This in turn leads to further structural racism throughout sectors as our perspectives are overlooked or put aside in favor of a universal solution, the common good, or, to be honest, financial considerations. When politicians have to prioritize between needs of minorities and underprivileged, or policies that benefit the majority. It's not difficult to guess on which foot they land. Even in an election year, they don't pander to us, rather the opposites, as I pointed out. There are no campaign slogans or promises of anti-discriminatory policies to better our socioeconomic status as a group, or in policies against right-wing extremism. We don't really matter in the bigger picture of politics and elections. Nationally and perhaps globally, this is the main driver of structural racism, in my opinion. With no real political will to prioritize work against structural racism, there are no incentive for the public or private sector to invest in change. And we often find structural racism are rooted in the issues of people of African descent not being prioritized out of financial reasons, or when our rights and well-being are in conflict with the rights of others. They are set aside. This includes the instance where we are in need of differential treatment to an equal starting point, in what products are available in grocery stores or cosmetic stores, to what network can land us a job, and even when we are subjected to racism. And the structures protect the rights of the racist or perpetrator of racism, not the rights of the person being subjected to racism. We can recognize structural racism where rights, need, and perspective are neglected out of lack of care, validation, or to appease the majority. This is why, in my perspective, it's imperative that we gain acknowledgement from society and decision makers, in particular for the structural racism we are facing. That's definitely the first step, and unfortunately it seems far away. Politicians are willing to point out and condemn blatant racism and their actions, but tiptoe around structural of inequality leading to poverty and exclusion, and will never, when faced with racist action, point to the structures that enable them. The actions are excused as individual, or if admitting government discriminations like racial profiling, point to the socioeconomic state of communities where we live, and turn up to an endless circle of arguments where it's our fault that we are being racially profiled, basically. Same goes for workers' union and other universal organizations. They are governed by their members through democratic processes. That's fine. Although they promote solidarity, their capacity and resources are limited. And this focus will always be on what will matter most for the largest mass of members. We're not. We need to change this narrative from their to ours. We need to meet this racism that doesn't acknowledge itself with not understanding, but facts, not dialogue, but steadfastness. Our narrative isn't a shared experience with the majority, it is ours, and the powers that be need to listen to us to understand. Structural racism cannot be eradicated by words, campaigns, or superficial inclusion and visibility. It needs structural change. That entails rights, the implementation of rights and concrete measures to change existing discriminations. The steps in combating structural racism starts with the definition, recognition, acknowledgement, and knowledge. We need to establish a consensus on a definition of structural racism, not the sociological or an everyday definition, within the legal definition. To foster recognition, we need to educate ourselves and our communities, especially the youth and people working in practical-oriented positions, and we need to strengthen both government and civil society capacity and competence in unmasking structural racism. And we need to make ourselves count. To gain acknowledgement and build knowledge on structural racism amongst decision makers, we have to communicate through facts, organized and through representatives in media, and directly to decision makers with clear strategy and objectives. And we have to communicate in the streets and online in numbers, uniting on these objectives. Only through this double strategy of communication can we reach through the media and political clutter, one objective at a time. To me, two main objectives should be a legal definition of structural discrimination, and that the reaction of discrimination must hit where it hurts. Other objectives will differ throughout the structures. In employment politics, we might need affirmative action or mentorship to increase the proportion of people of African descent in leadership positions. In child protective services, education and increased competence in cultural awareness, more trust and dialogue and less intrusive actions. Or in institutions where people work, we need that people of African descent that are employed in institutions are heard in the call for structures and protections against racism in words, threats, and violence that we have called for so many times. We are far from truly attacking structural racism. To combat it, we need to define it, be able to recognize it, be able to gain acknowledgement and knowledge amongst policy and decision makers. We need to have a united, organized movement with a clear strategy and objective. So that leads me to the role of the African diaspora. Who we are, what we can accomplish, and what we have to do to have an impact. Well, we Africans have been divided and conquered as continent, nations, as people. We have been told we differ in where we're born, in or out of Africa, what religions we adhere to, where out of Africa we live, and how we are, or our ancestors end up there through enslavement, as fugitives, workers, or students. Still, when I've been sitting through sessions at Permanent Forum of People of African Descent at the UN in Geneva or New York, hearing testimonies of representatives from countries as Brazil, Chile, United States, France, and Finland, we all face the same racism, the same racial profiling, issues in healthcare, lack of and lower incomes, and hindrances in organizations, to mention some. It's the degree and the severity that differs. And we can recognize this structural racism in how African and African descent-led states are underrepresented and exploited still. The African diaspora must be understood as all people of African descent living as subjects to a non-African state. Descendants of enslaved Africans kidnapped through the transatlantic slave trade, as well as refugees and immigrants, and their descendants who have more or less involuntarily or voluntarily, of security or material survival reasons, left Africa. Not only, or even first and foremost, because of our joint heritage, but because of our joint challenges and struggle. We must join as one Pan-African diaspora. The strength in a Pan-African movement lays in numbers, politically, and in cooperation financially. We might not be large enough as a group to switch European or Norwegian politics, but we may, along with fellow non-European immigrants, be the deciding vote. Most Norwegians has already chosen their bloc on the right or left, and seldom change the party they vote for. We, on the other hand, vote not in that great numbers, and we don't necessarily have the same party loyalty. And we aren't organized politically around our needs as many other interest groups. As a united African diaspora, we will be able to set the agenda, make structural racism and inequalities we face a topic for public debate and policy in Norway, Europe, and internationally. Through international organizing, we'll be able to put pressure on national governments and international institutions. Our objectives is to address structural racism through laws, regulations, and legal frameworks. We should support our local businesses, people in our networks, our own events and organizations to strengthen our capacity and resources. Volunteer work is, as I started off with, a surplus activity. On the international stage, a coalition of African, Caribbean, and smaller states pressured through the first Security Council resolution on Palestine. And African states are claiming their full independence in a movement that are slowly shifting the global power balance. We, the African diaspora, can be able to change our situation, the future of our children, and contribute in making a global impact. The key is, as I stated several times, Pan-African unity. For us in the first place in Norway, and then to strengthen our position, a European coalition. We need to understand that our destinies are closely linked, be it under the philosophy of Ubuntu or more pragmatic understanding that you need allies to get to where you want to go. I frankly couldn't care less. Even if we see our differences, do you really believe it's differentiated by nation and we are seen as anything other than Africans in the bigger picture of inclusion and discrimination policies and bureaucracy? We need to build our organizations and movement through supporting and promoting our organizations and network and engage the broader base of African Norwegians to unite on one or two concrete issues to push politically. There are 50 recommendations in the UN experts report Miriam just mentioned on people of African descent in Norway, most coinciding with the program of the Second International Decade for People of African Descent. A first step, I believe, for a Pan-African movement in Norway should therefore be to demand implementation of the decade. And secondly, for a long-term political goal where we can build a broader coalition and alliance with other groups, I believe we should demand a legal definition and laws against structural racism. We cannot discuss what we can't even agree on. The International Decade for People of African Descent for Justice, Recognition and Development is a unique opportunity to highlight our challenges and resources and to build a movement and a respected identity as an African diaspora in Norway. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Artem, for that powerful insight into structural racism. And it's an issue that shapes many aspects of society, and it gave us a lot to reflect on.
We will now have a 15-minute tea break while we prepare for our next speaker. Feel free to mingle and stretch your legs.
Thank you.
Kan ñu malam ko ñu ne mun date allow me. IP, okay. 191.6.20.
Charm Daily. Installing it, go to Charm Daily. So that comment. Imo bitte system share immediately. Document. Yeah, no comment.
So you know.
This one. Yeah, there it is.
Trying to lead also.
Ja, lead. Nej, ikke lead. Han vil snakke.
Ja, men from the test, everything.
Nej. Okay. Vilken är det?
Ja, har det detta din? Ja.
Så hvordan går vi?
Så brukar det.
Er det sånn, ikke sant?
Ja. Men
Det var, jeg så
Ja.
en, ja,
det var en...
nei. Skal jeg trykke på
Ja,
den?
vent litt, la meg komme forresten.
Ja. Det er den som,
Vent, bare. Because in present mode,
den,
it should look,
like this.
yeah.
But why did it take me,
So it has
yeah, some, it's like this.
yeah.
It's
but,
coming. Oh,
The presenter mode is a bit different, so let me just see what's the different.
maybe you have to send me, look at the link you send me.
Yeah.
You send me this. Maybe you
Yeah.
need to send me the whole presentation.
Yeah, I need to do that.
Or maybe we just try your PC and see.
Yeah, we can do that as well.
Skal vi prøve hans PC også? Fordi vi har jo et problem her.
Yeah.
Vi bare tar den.
Se den, har du? Ja, den? Ja, se. Bare.
Vi prøver. Da kan du ha den som, den kan være,
Notater?
den,
Okay.
den kan stå her.
Den er ikke se-utgangen, se-utgangen? Ja, men den er, ja, det kan hende den er litt ødelagt. Ja, den er litt ødelagt fra før. Ja, for det viser ikke, kommer ikke strøm. Ja, ok, en dag vi
Kopiere fra her.
Ja.
Hvordan kan man slå den av?
Det trenger jeg, den er på.
Ok. Bare send den til meg, den hele linken, så jeg kan.
Fordi han finner dårlig ord.
Ok, vi tar det her.
Ok, prøv nå.
Jeg har ikke kommet den. Ja, der er den. Ja, nå er det bedre. Er det den du trenger?
Ja,
Ja.
og så... Hvordan blir den stor?
Ja, da må du, fordi jeg sender det til
Jeg kan logge inn da.
Ja, logg inn, kanskje det er bedre.
Ja.
Og så den kan bli notat.
Ja.
Ja. Sjekk hvis internett er borte. Ja, det er internett. Ja, der kommer det. Da har du plass til å ta den med.
Ja. Krøllalfa, hvor er det? Det er pappa.
Hei. Ja, vi sånn. Ja, hyggelig. Det er deilig. Og du er stolt? Ja. Du var veldig stolt av han. Ja. Ja, jeg tok ferie en dag. I dag tar jeg en dag fra ferien min, og så for å bli her. Ingen. De hele tiden snakker om oss og for oss. Ja, vi må bli sammen og hjelpe sammen og få ting, fordi ja. Ja, det er det. Fordi alle snakker sammen, fordi der jeg jobber, jeg så det er mange organisasjoner. Vi har
ikke åpne. Ja. Ja.
Men du var her, ikke sant?
Ja, men det er den andre.
Det er den andre. Skal jeg gå inn igjen? Hvilken er det?
Den, men
Den.
siste.
Den.
Nei, den. Ja. Den, ja. Den.
Men ok, la meg ta den fra venstre. Fordi
Kanskje bare blande.
det er den, kanskje?
Ja, det er den.
Det er den. Ja, fordi det åpner med den. Yes. Er det den?
Ja, det er den. Takk.
Ok, du har ikke presentasjonen. Ja.
Sånn, ja.
Ja.
Yeah. I'm gonna use that mic.
Is this
There,
mic?
then.
This is the mic.
Okay.
But if you want the hand to walk
Yeah,
around,
yeah.
the hand is there.
Is that working?
Yeah, that works because I was using that one. You just have to put it on.
Ok, etter at dere har snakket, så kan dere bare inn til meg.
Ja. Du kan bare stå der kjapt. Du skal bare si.
Ok.
Okay. Okay, we're ready to start. If everybody can sit down. Yes, thank you. Now Binta will introduce our next speaker.
Let's hear from Patrick Habiambere from the IMDI Youth Network on Inclusion and Volunteering.
Okay, everybody, thank you for attending. And before I start on my main presentation, I was just wondering if you could take up your phone, because we're doing a bit interactiveness this time. So just take up your phone, scan this code, and then you will go to a site where you're gonna fill in a short form. It's basically a quiz, and if you don't have your phone here, you can do it with your partner. It just takes 3 minutes. So yeah, we'll just wait for you guys to get in, and then give me a hint, and then I'll start. Okay, so let me just map out who many are in and who many are waiting to get in. You're in, okay, nice. Okay, I'll give it 10 seconds. Sorry for the late ones, and then I gotta start, okay? Okay, so those who wanted to join, I guess they're in. It's 14 attendees, and that's really great. Okay, the first question. What comes to your mind when you hear the words young, gifted, and black? Then you gotta type in 3 different answers, and it will pop up on the screen. Okay, someone has been really fast. Beautiful. I love this word. Stereotypes, black excellence, proud, Nina Simone, of course, inspiring, skill. Okay, nice. More stereotypes, proudness, motivating, inspiring. That's one that most of you have typed so far. That's why it's so big. skill, motivating. Okay, I see. Okay, thank you. I think I move on. This is a question. It's a quiz, basically. I'm gonna test you guys before you test me on stage. So, how many kids of African descendants have experienced racism according to the Firstly report from Bufdir, barn og unges erfaringer med rasisme og diskriminering? So, the questionnaire is 7 out of 10, nobody, 4 out of 5, or 1 out of 2. Don't think too much. It's allowed to get this wrong. We're gonna learn today. Okay. And I can share that the ones that has written purple or type purple is correct. It's 7 out of 10. Shocking numbers. We move on. Okay, is it true that boys of African descent has a higher attendance in sports than their majority of the boys? We have some yes, we have some no. Who typed no? No, just cut. But it is yes, I was one of them. The last question, is it true that children with parents born outside of Norway have a higher volunteer number than the rest of the majority at their same age? Yes, in some sectors. They have not heard about it? Maybe. And it's a kind of leading question, but it is yes, in some sectors. For example, in environmental organizations and in religious communities. And I think that was the last one. Yeah. This means I have to run to my other presentation. So just bear with me when I switch pages. There and present. Okay. Who got 3 out of 3? I just want to know. Who got all right? Don't be shy. Raise your hand. You got all right? Okay, good. So, yeah, as the MCs introduced, I am Patrick, and I am from the youth panel of IMDi. You probably heard about IMDi, but you probably don't heard about the youth panel. Well, we are 13 youths from across of all Norway that gather 4 times a year, and we have some digital meetings, and we are supposed to be the voice, the ears, and the mouth of speaking for the youth population in Norway with minority backgrounds and multicultural backgrounds. So we have a high mandate, but we don't necessarily feel that we are doing that much. But we are able to like attend cool meetings like this, and we feel like at least we are doing something to give the youths more definition power, and that's important. So without further ado, this is my colleagues. We have Neguse, Julia, Mariam, Rana, Katima, Dunia. Up there we have the youngest one. Her name is, oh, what's her name, Henrik? I forgot it. Yeah, Ravan, yeah. We have Iver, we have Abdi, we have Abdi Malik, and his name is Georgie. The reason to why I'm not in this picture is because I didn't want to take a performative picture, because we were at the IMDi office that day, and the Ministry of Work, Labor, and Inclusion, no, Labor, she was there, and she had this wonderful speech, and then she was like, let's take a picture, and I was like, no, I'm not going to take a picture. And we have been doing a lot of cool stuff this year. This year, we wrote, for instance, this article to VG. It's one of the most read newspaper in Norway, and the title was "Has to become trendy to become a racist," and we managed to post it, and it was actually used at an exam for a school in 10th grade. So all of the kids at that school managed to read our article and used it in their exams. So that was really cool. That was a really cool tilbakemelding that we got. And yeah, so if you have time, go into VG and read this article. But without further ado, what and they ordered from me was to make sure that you guys sit with a view of how is it to be a youth and how is it to be a person with African descendants in Norway. So I'm gonna try to answer that by using some numbers from the report and using some own experiences. So in my daily work, I work with Catalysts. It's an organization that works on ideal and volunteer-based, and we do mentor program for youths, so they can have a bit more easy access into the workforce. So we're trying to combat social mobility and the gap for minority youths. And this autumn and last year, we launched a project called Silence Hurts. And we wanted to contextualize what racism is in Norway with, for example, using this pyramid of prejudice. So we started to see that it often starts with a lack of knowledge, lack of contact, lack of trust and empathy. And then it moves on to stereotypes, biases, and it can also move to what we see last week, the murder of Tamima, or in other words, violence and threats. And when we mapped out this, we saw the climate in Norway, and we saw that Norwegian youths are not any different than youths outside of the Nordic countries and in the States or in the motherlands. We saw that they're quite similar and the patterns are also the same. So when we saw that, we were like, okay, how do we combat this? And that's how we launched this campaign called Silence Hurts. So if you have time, look into that as well. So when the expert group was here in December, I was so lucky to attend one of their workshops at the Antirasistisk Center in the hall called Benjamin Salen, named after Benjamin Hermansen, who was brutally murdered in 2001. They have this workshop, and after that, they gave us a report. They gave us a summary, and based on that report, I'm going to give you some point of views of how it is to be a minority and a person of African descendants based on some facts and some lived experiences. And if you have some questions, don't be afraid to raise your hand. I love questions. Okay. So the first one I want to tap into is the colonial past. So as they highlighted in the report, Norway has a colonial past, but we struggles to address it and confront it. And this has passed generational traumas to many generations of kids, even though the teachers now, especially those who have Norwegian as a subject, they have this book called Handbook to Being a Young Anti-Racist. They have this on their literature list, but that's a small step in the right direction. We still hasn't combated our colonial past. And as someone that needs to live in a country where we don't combat our colonial past and we always push on that Norway are this saint, we give out the Nobel Peace Prize, it's hard to live in that country. Even when we see the integreringsbarometer, the prejudice against our new neighbors, as we like to call them, are not turning down, especially when it comes to young white men. And this is scary. This is anti-blackness, and you don't name it by how it is. So when I saw this in the report, I was kind of shocked, but it's important to know, that Norway has a colonial past, and we need to teach our children that, because we tend to think that we don't have it. Yeah. And then we have representation. Representation is a huge topic when it comes to the diaspora and the descendants, because we tend to think that we don't have someone to look up to. When I was a kid, it was a lack of faces that I could recognize myself in. It was a lack of faces that I could see myself in. And this is also a problem within the politics sphere, within the volunteer sphere, within beauty standards, because we don't see ourselves represented, and we think that we are not worth, because worth and representation are interlinked. So that is also something that we need to combat every day as a descendants of Africa. And we also, it's this term called minority stress that we also need to combat every day, walking through our embodiment and beings of Norway, navigating through the society. And that's also kind of harsh. When we talk about economics, we just got numbers from IMDi actually, that 4 out of 10 youths grow up in low-income families, and the 4 out of 10 is also innvandrerfamilier. So that is quite high numbers, and we see the correlation between your socio-economical background, your time lived in Norway, and your time lived in Norway, and your nationality. And this is also numbers that we have to look into, because they are having kids, and that's a curse, When the kids are born into low-income families, they look for pathways to combat it, and then we start to see youth criminality. But we don't tend to see the root causes. We just jump into conclusions and symptoms like youth criminality. Okay. This is a point where they discussed the welfare system, aka barnevernet. We know that some of our families are afraid of barnevernet. We know that some of our kids have negative experience with the welfare system. And we know that this is because of lack of language, it's language barriers, it's the competency within ethnic minorities quite low, and we tend to have low access to tolker, and this is just a negative loophole that makes these systemical barriers freshly upheld. So yeah, this is also something that we as kids and youths of the African descendants needs to combat every day. But they also, in this report, they gave us some recommendations. They didn't not only map out and highlight how the state is, they did actually some interesting recommendations. And one of them is how to finance grassroots organizations and how to celebrate their heritage, how to celebrate traditions and the community life. And this is also what we can call third spaces, because as youths navigating through Norway, we have this tendency to gather in, and we find ourselves somehow. We have many places that offers these third spaces, and reading through this report, I'm a really advocate for this called third spaces, because this allows us to be in a place where we feel belongs, and we doesn't need to code switch, we doesn't need to feel the double consciousness, we can just be ourselves, and that's really important. Reading through the article, I also came across these statements from Catherine, and she states that children of African descendants are not considered children at all due to racial discrimination, racial stereotypes, systematic racial discrimination, and xenophobia. And that's really true, because if we're not considered by who we are we going to be considered as? Because my skin color is not the only person I am. We are intersections between many different levels and layers of ourselves. And knowing that the expert group says this, it's a kind of shocking phenomenon, because that makes me think, how are we going to combat it if the law don't say that we are kids at all? And if it's not, because we are kids, it should be enough to just be a kid. A famous author in Norway called Sumaya Jirde Ali says this in one of her books. It should be enough to just be a kid, but it's not. We have to be advocates for racism, against racism, and that's a lot. That's a heavy burden to carry. So for collaboration, please email my coordinator sitting in the back, the Muzungu in the back. He is called Henrik. But I also want to drop some few points as well, as being and navigating through Norway as a minority. We tend to experience more ethnic profiling from the police. It's a freshly report from Save the Children's and Antirasistic Center that have stated this phenomenon. We tend to have lack of knowledge of our heritage because we don't get teach that in school. The curriculum is not suited for who we are. So we have to seek alternative sources like social medias, and that's not only, a legit source. We tend to seek this subtle racism in our everyday life, because when someone says, or let me give you a lived experience, I think I will just use 2 minutes more a day. When we have, for example, about enslavement in school, we tend to have this teacher that think that they can say the N-word, and we also tend that in this subject, all the white kids are looking at you to see, okay, maybe this is something that you have knowledge about. It's not. We have the same amount of knowledge as the rest of the classroom, but it's these stereotypes, and this is ongoing, and it's subtle racism in Norway that is hard to combat because it comes in microaggression and it's hard to combat, but it exists. That is racism in Norway. But we also need to acknowledge the fact that even though we go through minority stress, even though we have to reclaim our own narrative, we have to decolonize our own mind, there is places in Norway that work for us and by us. Here is an inspirational list for you if you sometimes think that, oh, my child don't have any role models that look like them. You can actually visit these places. Many of them are actual physical places in Oslo. I know that there are going to be established some more places outside of Oslo as well that allows this third space to interact. So we have to do a lot of preventive work. We have to teach Ubuntu in the Norwegian classrooms from a young age, and we have to empower that being a third culture kid is a strength, not a burden. And by that, I think it will be more easy to be looking like me and Emily sitting in the back to navigate through Norway. Okay, thanks for me.
Thank you so much, Patrick. Thank you for the beautiful presentation, and you really brought the youth perspective to the seminar. Now it's your turn to contribute. We'll break into groups for 10 minutes, and we will reflect, share, and propose ideas about the topics that have been shared.
Let's make this space one of collaboration, honesty, and vision. You'll be broken into 3 groups, where one group will discuss the problems, another group will discuss solutions, and the final group will strategize.
So Nene and they will help you break into groups of 3.
One person take notes and then we take it.
Welcome back, everyone. Hello?
Ja, take charge. Sitter høyre. Kom igjen, Vita. Snill, da. Hello? Okay, now we... Hello? Okay. Guys.
Funker den?
Thank you, thank you.
Welcome back.
Yeah.
Let's hear from each group and reflect on the insight shared. We can start with group 1. Their task was to reflect on the problems. So,
If everybody can be quiet, please.
Hello? Yeah. We are group 1 and we talked about problems of living as a minority. And we actually talked about our different experiences when it comes to internalized racism, that our problems are different when it comes because of age and how we have lived life, and also the struggle of fitting in, no matter what you do, no matter how much you change to fit in as a perfect Norwegian. And we also some of us also talked about our experience as a parent and how we talk to our kids and how we experience different things, because most of the kids are born here in Norway while the parents are born outside. So there's a difference in how we experience things and how we deal with it. We also talked about systematic racism in work, in hospitals, and yeah, etc. And one of us also talked about the different types of resilience, because some of us feel like we stand up for ourselves differently when we're born outside of, for example, Norway and in Africa, than what we do when we're born in Norway. And we also talked about integreringsparadox. I don't know what that is in English. And yeah, the different reactions of, or more that how people react to us reacting to racism. So that's all.
Thank you. Now we'll go to group number 2. Solutions, I think.
So we have the solutions, and just to make it easier to get into a conversation, we decided to create a problem. So we decided to call it minorities first, and the solutions that could be around that is one of the things that we mentioned was acknowledgement. It's important to have an acknowledgement around it within our society, and also to have awareness. And communication was also mentioned. That it's important to be able to communicate without fear, to be able to say things the way they are, to be able to name it without being too sensitive, but also not being too scared to say the wrong word or to be misunderstood. And also that it's important to communicate both ways as in the oppressor and the oppressed. We also talked about how important it is to give away the right information, as in when people move into the country, a a lot of people have been misunderstood, but also they haven't received the right informations. And that could be a solution that could be discussed. And also to have the opportunity to have equal opportunities when it comes to work. One of the examples that was given was the refugees from Ukraine, and some of the refugees who have already been in the country, and there hasn't been enough equality, there hasn't been equal opportunities given to both groups. That's something that can also be discussed, and also to be able to talk about the difference between integrating and assimilating. That in Norway we talk a lot about integrating, but I don't think a lot of people actually know the meaning of what integration means. And a lot of integration that we do is actually talking about assimilating and not necessarily integrating. That's what we have so far.
Now moving on to group number 3.
Thank you. So the first one we have is media. So presenting more positive stories about the African descendants, what we do. Yeah, but for me, we have many highlights, but I would say before media, I would say is that the African descendants should be organized and, first of all, united and organized, like sitting together and decide what we want to do and why we are doing that. Yeah, and there is also funding for grassroots organizations. Would be one of the strategies. Capacity, getting support and capacity to build those organizations, and having people of African descendants use it as resources. By this we are talking about the states and other institutions, just correctly. And also positive political rhetoric about immigration. It would be like in general, but here we are talking about African descendants. And yeah, I have again here that we have to unite and work together. Yeah, speak for us. This is very important. And actually, I think it's the most important, the number one. Yeah. And what else we have? Yeah, accept also that racism exists in Norway and talk about it. Is really, really important. And use like a platform like this one as a start. Supporting, we need also supporting like costs for those grassroots organizations, and also our self-evaluations as African descents. I can comment a little bit about, like, for example, this platform. I didn't know before yesterday that this was happening, because they sent to me. So, I don't know, there is more that we can do, and yeah, to share the information, to share about what's going on, maybe. You want to add? Yeah? Okay, so that's it.
Thank you so much.
This is where ideas become action. Thank you so much for your thoughtful contributions.
Now it's time to relax and enjoy a delicious meal together, and dinner is served.
Bon appetit, everyone. Let's continue the conversation over food.
So please feel free to go and eat. Thank you.
Samla inn arkene.